please. I haven't done anything wrong, I said out. Now, sir, I'm just asking why you pulled me over. Oh, listen to that, Simmons. This one thinks she's got rights. Laughter. Real laughter. The kind that comes easy when a man knows nobody's going to stop him. Officer Wade Garrity grabbed Maya Ellison by the arm, yanked her out of her silver Toyota Corolla, and slammed her face first against the hood. The metal was still hot from the afternoon sun. She felt it burn against her cheek before she felt the cuffs bite into her wrists. That's what happens when your kind forgets where you are, Garrity said, and Deputy Dale Simmons burst out laughing behind him, phone already raised, already recording, not for evidence, but for entertainment. A woman filling her tank at the gas station across the street looked over, then looked away. Maya didn't scream, didn't cry. But what came out of her mouth 11 minutes later would end 2 law enforcement careers, ignite a federal investigation, and turn a town nobody had ever heard of into a name the entire country would not stop saying. This is that story. The dash cam on Garrity's cruiser was already rolling when he hit the lights. Saturday afternoon, Route 9, just outside Briar Hollow, Georgia, population maybe 1,100, 1 gas station, 1 diner that closed at 7, and 2 deputies with far too much time and far too little supervision. Maya's Corolla had been doing 32 in a 35. No swerving, no broken taillight, no expired registration. Just a black woman behind the wheel, driving through the wrong stretch of road on the wrong afternoon. Garrity had hit the lights anyway. "Bet you $5," she cries, he'd said to Simmons before they even pulled her over. Now here she was, cheek pressed to hot metal, a gospel station still playing low on the radio, a half-empty water bottle rolling off the passenger seat and hitting the asphalt with a soft, hollow thud. Garrity paced behind her, chest puffed out, thumbs hooked in his belt like he was posing for a photograph nobody asked him to take. You know what I love about this job, Simmons? Teaching manners, especially to the ones who never got taught at home. He flicked the back of Maya's ear with 2 fingers, hard enough to sting. "Please remove your hand," she said. Garrity froze for half a second, then smiled wider than before. "Or what?" Maya said nothing. Her eyes found the little red light blinking steady on the dashcam, mounted to the windshield of his cruiser. She had learned a long time ago that stillness was its own kind of armor. That silence could outlast any man who confused a badge for permission. She wasn't quiet because she was scared she was counting. Briar Hollow raised Maya Ellison the way it raised every black child born there, with a smile that said, "Be grateful," stretched thin over something much colder underneath. She grew up on Larkspur Lane, the side of town where the pavement gave out half a mile before the streetlights did, and the county always seemed to forget when trash day was. Her mother, Dorothy Ellison, worked double shifts at Briar County Regional. 12 hours cleaning wounds, 12 hours holding the hands of dying strangers, 6 days a week, for 26 years straight. Her father, Curtis, ran the transmission shop off Highway 12 until the cancer took him when Maya was 13. Nobody from the shop sent flowers. Nobody from the shop said a word. School taught its own lessons, early and often. 3rd grade, a boy named Bobby Kessler yanked her braids in the cafeteria line and told her they looked like a mop. Asked if her mama cleaned floors with her hair. The teacher saw it happen. The teacher said nothing. 5th grade, a substitute handed back a math test, top score in the class, and the boy behind her snatched it off her desk. No way a black girl beat me. She probably cheated. The substitute shrugged and moved on to the next paper, like nothing had happened at all. 7th grade, the guidance counselor sat Dorothy down and gently suggested Maya consider a vocational track. College might be a stretch, given her background. Dorothy asked exactly what background he meant. He never answered. That night, Maya asked her mother why nobody ever stepped in. Dorothy set down her fork, looked her daughter dead in the eye, and said the sentence Maya would carry for the rest of her life. Because help isn't coming for us, baby. So you become the thing they can't afford to ignore. She never forgot it. She carved that sentence into every exam, every essay, every scholarship application, every all-nighter at the library while the rest of Briar Hollow slept easy. Full ride to Georgetown. Top of her class in international security studies, not because the professors liked her, but because her work left them no room to argue otherwise. Her thesis advisor once told a colleague, "She writes like she's building a case against the entire world." He meant it kindly. Maya heard it as an accurate description of her life. After Georgetown came the Pentagon. She started as an intern fetching coffee for people who didn't bother learning her name for 6 months straight. "Hey, you." New girl, dark hair. Even though she was the only black woman on the entire floor. A senior analyst asked her 3 separate times if she was there to empty the trash bins. Someone left a lunch tray on her desk with a sticky note that said, "Thanks, Han." She filed the briefs anyway, organized the classified folders anyway, bit her tongue so many times it should have bled, and she climbed, analyst, policy advisor, senior strategist, and then Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategic Operations. The kind of title that makes a conference room go quiet the moment the nameplate hits the table. Maya had briefed 4-star generals who leaned forward when she spoke. She had drafted memos that reshaped deployments across 2 continents. And here is the detail that mattered most on that Saturday afternoon outside Briar Hollow. She never once changed how she looked. Same worn gray hoodie. Same modest Corolla with the small dent above the rear wheel. Same scuffed sneakers from the discount store. She didn't carry business cards to dinner parties, mostly, because she never went to any. Once a month, she drove 3.5 hours south, back to Larkspur Lane, cooked red beans and rice with her mother, sat on the porch swing until the fireflies came out, and went to Sunday service at New Zion Baptist, where Pastor Alvarez still called her baby girl and had no idea what she did Monday through Friday in a building with its own zip code. In Washington, she moved budgets larger than Briar Hollow's entire annual tax revenue. In Briar Hollow, she was still just the Ellison girl from Larkspur Lane, Curtis's daughter, Dorothy's child, the quiet one with the good grades who left and somehow never forgot to come back. That was the woman Wade Garrity had just slammed against the hood of his patrol car. That was the woman Dale Simmons was filming for laughs. A woman who had sat in rooms where one wrong sentence could tip a nation toward war, and had never once lost her composure. And these 2 men looked at her and saw a hoodie, an old car, and a mouth that wouldn't stay shut. They didn't see the clearance badge locked in her glove compartment. Didn't see the direct line to the office of the Secretary of Defense saved under a single letter in her phone. Didn't see 20 years of silence, strategy, and survival folded into a 5'5" frame, with her cheek pressed against their hood. They saw exactly what Briar Hollow had trained them their entire lives to see. Nothing. Garrity checked her license the way a man skims a grocery receipt, barely at all. He held it up to the fading light, squinted, and tossed it carelessly onto the roof of the Corolla. Maya Ellison, D.C. address. He said it like an accusation. "Long way from home, aren't you?" "I'm visiting my mother. She lives on Larkspur Lane." Larkspur Lane. Garrity glanced at Simmons. "That's the low-income side, right?" "Section 8 row," Simmons said, not even glancing up from his phone. Garrity turned back, leaned in close enough that she could smell chewing tobacco on his breath. "So let me get this straight. You roll into my town in this rust bucket, and when I pull you over, lawfully, you decide to give me lip. I asked why you stopped me. That's not attitude. See, that right there." He pointed at her mouth. "That's your problem. Always got something smart to say, never got the sense to keep it shut." He pulled out his citation pad and began writing, Slow, deliberate, the way a man writes when he wants you watching every stroke of the pen. Failure to comply with a lawful order. He said each word out loud. Resisting, obstruction. He looked up, almost proud. How's that sound? I didn't resist anything. You resisted the second you opened your mouth. He ripped the ticket free and held it inches from her face. Judge is gonna love this one. They always do, with your kind. Simmons circled the Corolla and pulled the passenger door open without asking. He rifled through the glove box, tossed a stack of napkins onto the road, found a pair of sunglasses, and slid them onto his own face. Nice shades, probably stolen. Those are mine. Sure they are. He dropped them onto the pavement and ground his boot heel into the lens. The crack was sharp enough to reach the dashcam microphone 30 feet away. Oops. Garrity's laugh came out high and wheezing, the laugh of a man who had never once been made to answer for anything in his life. A pickup truck slowed at the intersection. The driver, an older white man in a trucker cap, looked at the cuffs, looked at the two deputies, and kept right on driving without touching his brakes. Maya watched the taillights shrink and disappear. She'd seen that look 100 times before. The look that says, "Not my problem." Briar Hollow had perfected that look across 3 generations. Simmons pulled a leather folder from beneath the driver's seat, flipped it open without really looking, saw the federal seal, saw the small block letters beneath her photograph, and tossed it onto the passenger seat like junk mail. Bunch of papers, he told Garrity. Probably fake. You know how they do. Wouldn't surprise me. Garrity spun Maya around to face him. Any warrants I should know about? No. Anything illegal in that car? No. You sure? 'Cause something about this whole situation smells off to me. He made a show of sniffing the air. Actually, yeah. Something definitely smells. Simmons snorted with laughter. Garrity grinned at his own joke like a child proud of scrawling something ugly on a bathroom wall. He wasn't finished. You know, Simmons, I've done this a long time, and every single time it's the same story. They roll through here, acting like they own the road, and the second you pull them over, it's, "I didn't do nothing, officer." "Why you stopping me, officer?" He looked at Maya. You know why, though. Deep down, you know exactly why. She said nothing. That's what I thought. He spat near her shoe. Smart girl. See, you can learn. Simmons was already scrolling through her phone. No permission asked. No warrant produced. Just thumbs sliding across a screen that wasn't his to touch. Lot of DC contacts in here, he said, smirking. Bet half of them are fake. Check her photos, Garrity said. Already on it. Simmons swiped through the camera roll. Government buildings, an American flag, an older woman on a porch. He laughed. Girl thinks she's important. Maya's jaw tightened by exactly 1 degree. Enough that the dashcam might have caught it, if anyone had ever bothered to look frame by frame. Her voice stayed flat, the same choice she used when 4-star generals tried to talk over her in a briefing. Are you going to charge me with something, or are you going to let me go? Charge you. Garrity tilted his head. Honey, I haven't even started with you yet. You're in my county now, my jurisdiction, my rules, and my rule says you stand there and keep that pretty little mouth shut until I decide otherwise. 17 minutes had passed since the stop began. Maya hadn't raised her voice once, hadn't flinched once, hadn't given them a single thing they could use. But behind those still, steady eyes, something was turning. Not anger. Arithmetic. The exact kind of calculation she'd been trained to make in rooms with much higher stakes than this one. Knowing precisely what cards she held, knowing precisely when to lay them down. The sky over Briar Hollow was sliding into that deep copper color that comes right before dark. Garrity popped the trunk, pulled out her suitcase, and unzipped it in the middle of the road. He held up a blouse between 2 fingers. Well, look at this. Expensive taste for a girl from Larkspur Lane. Probably boosted it, Simmons said. Probably. Garrity stuffed the blouse back in wrong and shoved the suitcase off the trunk. It hit the gravel and burst open. A Sunday dress, a pair of flats, and a small framed photograph of Maya and her mother on the porch swing. The glass cracked the moment it struck the ground, the fracture running straight between their two faces. "Are you done?" Maya asked. Garrity walked back and stood too close, the way men do when they want you to feel small. "I'm done when I say I'm done. Understand me? Or is that too complicated?" He tapped her forehead once with his finger. Then he bent down, picked up the Sunday dress. The one Dorothy had ironed and hung in her closet on her last visit, the one she wore every month to New Zion Baptist, and held it against his own chest like a fashion model, batting his eyelashes at Simmons. "What do you think?"
My color.
"Gorgeous, Wade." They both howled with laughter. Garrity dropped the dress and stepped over it, like it was nothing more than a rag on the roadside. He picked up the cracked photograph next, squinted at it. "Let me guess.
Grandmama?
She teach you how to steal too, or just how to run your mouth at cops?" "That's my mother." Something shifted behind Maya's eyes. A door that had been left slightly open for 17 minutes now closed. Quietly. Completely. "Your mother?" Garrity set the photo face down on the trunk. "Well, tell your mother she raised a real piece of work." Maya let the silence stretch exactly 3 seconds. "I'm entitled to a phone call." Garrity blinked. "You're not under arrest." "I'm in handcuffs." "You've searched my vehicle without consent. You've written citations for offenses that don't exist. I am entitled to a phone call." The words came out clean, mechanical, like something read from a manual memorized years ago. Garrity glanced at Simmons. Simmons shrugged. "Fine." Garrity fished her phone out of the cup holder and held it up. "Call your mama. Tell her to come get you. Maybe she can teach you some manners on the ride home." "I'm not calling my mother." "Then,
Who, your baby daddy?
your lawyer?" Garrity grinned. "Public defender's office closes at 4, sweetheart." Maya looked at him, steady. The same eyes that had once held a room full of disagreeing generals without blinking once. "I'd like to call the Pentagon." For half a second, nothing happened at all. Just the gas station's fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and a dog barking somewhere down the road. Then Garrity's face cracked wide open, not in fear, but in pure, unfiltered delight. He doubled over, slapped his knee, and let out a laugh so high and broken it sounded almost like a man in pain. The Pentagon. He could barely get the word out.
Simmons. Simmons, you hear that?
"She wants to call the Pentagon." Simmons lost it completely, bracing himself against the cruiser door, phone shaking in his hand as he kept recording.
Oh my God.
"Oh my God, this is the best thing we've ever gotten."
The Pentagon.
Next, she's going to say she knows the president. Or maybe she is the president. He slapped the cruiser roof. "President of Larkspur Lane. You are pure entertainment, girl." Garrity wiped tears from his eyes, steadied himself, and put on a mocking voice, holding an invisible phone to his ear. "Hello, Pentagon? Yeah, this is Deputy Garrity down in Briar Hollow. Got a real VIP here in cuffs. Honda, sorry Corolla, and a bad attitude. Send the Marines." They howled, both of them. 2 grown men in county uniforms laughing so hard their duty belts shook, every second of it captured clean on the dashcam microphone 30 feet away. "You know what?" Garrity unlocked her phone with a swipe. No passcode needed. She'd never bothered, and held it out to her. "Go on. Call. I want to hear this. Put it on speaker." "Simmons, come here. You're going to want to hear who picks up." Maya took the phone with cuffed hands and awkward grip, fingers already swollen from the tight metal, biting into her wrists. She didn't scroll through contacts. She typed the number from memory, 10 digits, no hesitation. The line rang once, twice. A crisp professional voice answered, the kind of voice that belongs to someone sitting behind a desk with a flag on either side. "Office of Deputy Assistant Secretary Ellison. How may I direct your call?" The laughter didn't fade out slowly. It stopped the way a heart monitor flatlines. One moment there was sound. The next moment there was nothing at all. Garrity's mouth was still open, the shape of his last laugh frozen there like a photograph. Maya spoke into the phone, calm, precise. Every word measured the way ammunition is measured, by caliber. This is Deputy Assistant Secretary Ellison. I have been unlawfully detained by Briar County Sheriff's deputies. Badge numbers 4412 and 4508. This encounter is being recorded on the department's own dashcam. Please notify the Secretary's office immediately and route this to the Inspector General. Understood, ma'am. Initiating protocol. Please stay on the line. Maya lowered the phone and looked at Garrity. She didn't smile, didn't gloat, didn't need to say another word. The color drained out of Wade Garrity's face the way water drains from a cracked glass. Slow at first, then all at once. 90 seconds. That's how long it took between Maya's call and the first ring at the Briar County Sheriff's front desk. Sergeant Ray Doolin was halfway through a gas station sandwich when the phone screamed on his desk. Briar County Sheriff's Sergeant Dew. This is Colonel Renata Hayes, Office of the Inspector General, United States Department of Defense. I need your commanding officer on this line in the next 60 seconds. You currently have 2 deputies detaining a senior Defense Department official. Deputy Assistant Secretary Maya Ellison, badge numbers 4412 and 4508. This call is being recorded and transcribed in real time. Doolin set his sandwich down. His hand was shaking, and he didn't fully understand why yet. He grabbed his radio, didn't bother with call codes, didn't bother with protocol. Garrity, what in God's name did you do? Static. Then Garrity's voice, thin now, the ghost of that laugh still clinging to the edges. Sarge, it's nothing. We got a stop out on Route 9. Some lady tried to bluff us with some Pentagon nonsense. That is not a bluff. Doolin's voice cracked through the radio, loud enough for Maya to hear from 15 feet away. I've got a colonel from the Inspector General's office on my other line right now. She said this woman is a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. Do you understand what that means? Uncuff her. Now. Do not say another word to her. Do not touch her vehicle. Do not touch anything else that belongs to her. Stand down and wait for the sheriff. He's being called as we speak. Maya heard every word. Briar County had never encrypted its radio channels. Never had a reason to. Nothing had ever happened there. Until now. Garrity's swagger drained out of him in real time. The lean-in posture, the finger-tapping, the jokes, all of it evaporated like spit on hot asphalt. His hands were trembling, and he knew she could see it. Simmons paced behind the cruiser in short, fast steps, the walk of a man mentally replaying every sentence he'd spoken in the last 20 minutes. Probably stolen. Girl thinks she's important, and realizing all at once that every syllable of it was sitting on a dashcam that was already being transcribed inside the Pentagon. Turn around, Garrity said, barely above a whisper. Maya turned. His fingers fumbled with the key. It took him 3 separate tries to undo what he'd snapped shut in half a second. The cuffs finally came loose. She brought her hands forward, rotated her wrists. Raw, red welts pressed into perfect circles, like bracelets made of something never meant to be worn. She didn't rub them, didn't wince. She let the marks speak for themselves. Ma'am, Garrity started. Don't. Maya's voice was quiet. Not angry. Just finished. Don't you dare ma'am me now. 5 minutes ago, I was sweetheart. I was honey. I was your kind. You flicked my ear like I was a stray dog. You mocked my mother's photograph. You told me I smelled. She lifted her wrists, so the welts caught the last light of the day. So don't you ma'am me now. Garrity closed his mouth and swallowed hard, his throat working like a man trying to keep something down. 12 minutes later, a black SUV tore down Route 9 doing 60 in a 35. No sirens. Just raw speed. Sheriff Boyd Callahan stepped out before the engine had fully stopped. shirt half tucked, hair still wet from the shower he'd been pulled out of. 11 years as sheriff, and his biggest crisis to date had been a hand-stolen riding mower. Nothing had prepared him for this. He walked toward Maya, hand extended, the handshake of a man who'd rehearsed an apology in his rearview mirror the entire drive over. "Ms. Ellison, I want you to know personally that it's Deputy Assistant Secretary Ellison. She didn't take his hand, and you can save the apology for the federal investigators." His hand hung in the air for 3 full seconds before he pulled it back. He turned to Garrity and Simmons, his face already doing the math on exactly how much of his career had just gone up in flames. "Badges. Both of you." Now, Garrity unclipped his and held it out like something he'd already lost. Simmons's hands moved slower, like he was saying goodbye to it. He set it in the sheriff's palm without a word. Inside the station, every line was already ringing. The news wasn't moving through Briar Hollow. It was moving above it, through channels these 2 deputies had never had access to, and never would again. Through a chain of command that started with a woman in a gray hoodie and ended somewhere they couldn't even begin to imagine. Maya walked back to her Corolla, gathered the suitcase off the gravel, folded the ruined Sunday dress, and set the cracked photograph of herself and her mother gently on the passenger seat. She didn't speed off. She signaled, checked her mirrors, and pulled back onto Route 9 at exactly the posted limit. In her rearview mirror, 2 deputies without badges, a sheriff without answers, and a town about to become famous for every wrong reason imaginable. The footage surfaced online 4 days later. Nobody ever confirmed who leaked it. Internal Affairs spent weeks trying to trace the source and came up with nothing. By 6 in the morning, it was circulating on every major platform. By noon, it had a name. People started calling it the Briar Hollow Tape. 19 minutes, unedited, uncut. The audio crisp enough to hear every insult, every laugh, every crack of sunglasses breaking under a boot heel. The internet did what the internet does. It watched. It rewound, it screenshotted, it raged. The first clip to explode was 6 seconds long. Garrity and Simmons high-fiving over Maya's bent-over body. The caption read, "They celebrated over a handcuffed woman. Let that sit with you." 40 million views inside of 2 days. The second clip was the phone call itself. Garrity's mocking Pentagon impression, followed instantly by the real voice answering, followed by dead silence and his frozen face. Someone scored it to a comedic sting. It became the most shared clip on the platform for 3 days running. The third clip cut the deepest, even though it was the quietest. Simmons pulling the federal badge from the glove box, glancing at it for less than a second, tossing it onto the seat. Bunch of papers, probably fake, 7 seconds long, 60,000 comments. The top comment with 2 million likes, read. He held her entire career in his hands and threw it away because of the color of her skin. That's the whole story in 7 seconds. Hashtags caught fire overnight. Justice for Maya trended in all 50 states within 6 hours. A companion trend followed. Ordinary people posting themselves in work clothes next to their diplomas, their badges, their titles. A janitor beside his medical degree. A line cook beside her law school acceptance letter. The message underneath every post was the same. You don't know who you're disrespecting. A fourth clip circulated that most news outlets refused to air unedited. Garrity flicking Maya's ear, the audio catching his exact words. Then his hands on her mother's photograph. "She teach you how to steal too?" The comments didn't just rage this time. They grieved. One reply from a woman in Ohio read, "My mama's photo sits on my dashboard too. I don't know what I'd do if an officer touched it like that." It became one of the most liked replies the platform had ever recorded. Briar Hollow Sheriff turned into something sharper than a hashtag, a magnifying glass. People pulled public records. Garrity had 7 prior complaints in 4 years. Every single one from black residents. Every single one dismissed without review. Simmons's old social media, deleted but archived by strangers within hours, showed a Confederate flag profile photo from years earlier and a comment under a police reform article that read, "If they don't want trouble, they should act right." The department tried to contain it with a statement Wednesday morning. Officers placed on administrative leave, pending internal review. Administrative leave, with pay. The internet had a translation ready within minutes. Paid vacation for humiliating a woman on camera. By Thursday, the mayor of Briar Hollow, a man who hadn't held a press conference in over 5 years, stood behind a podium with no plan and 3 microphones pointed at his face. We don't condone the actions depicted in the video, and they don't reflect the values of..." A reporter cut him off. "Mayor," the officer used the words, "your kind. Does Briar Hollow have a racial profiling problem?" He blinked, looked at his notes, looked at the cameras. "I'm not prepared to answer that right now." The clip went viral by dinner. Friday, the suspensions were upgraded to unpaid. Not because anyone found a conscience, but because 2 county commissioners threatened to resign publicly if it didn't happen. Saturday, a coalition of civil rights groups filed formal complaints. 3 law firms offered Maya free representation. She declined all 3. Sunday, the Department of Justice announced a preliminary inquiry into every traffic stop the Briar County Sheriff's Department had logged in 5 years. A federal team arrived Monday morning. What they found took weeks to compile, but only seconds to understand. 74% of Garrity's stops over 5 years involved black drivers, in a county that was 62% white. Simmons's numbers were worse, 83%. Neither man had ever once been flagged for review. The system hadn't failed. The system had worked exactly the way it was quietly built to work. 12 days after the stop, Maya broke her public silence. 1 interview, 1 camera, 1 chair. National evening news. The anchor had 40 minutes of prepared questions. Maya gave her 22, and it was more than enough. She walked into the studio in a sharp black suit, hair pulled back the same simple way. It had been the day the cuffs went on. But everything else about her had changed. The woman on screen looked like someone who moved defense budgets and sat in rooms where wars were planned. That was exactly the point. "Deputy Secretary Ellison, how are you feeling?" Maya paused, 2 full seconds. "I'm not here to talk about my feelings. I'm here to talk about a system." Walk us through that day. "I was driving to see my mother. I was 3 miles under the speed limit. Both hands on the wheel. I was stopped because I am black in a county that treats that as probable cause. Everything that happened after was predictable. Predictable. I've been pulled over 11 times in 12 years. 4 of those times in Briar Hollow alone. Every single time. For nothing. Every time. The same questions. Where are you going? Where are you coming from? What's in the car? The script never changes. Only the officer does." They played the clip. The one where Garrity said, "your kind." The one where Simmons ground her sunglasses under his boot. Maya watched it on the studio monitor without her face moving once. How did it feel, hearing those words again? She took a slow breath. The kind a person takes when choosing between the diplomatic answer and the true one. It felt familiar. That's the part that hurts the most. It wasn't shocking. It wasn't new. I have been called worse things in nicer buildings by men with fancier titles. The only difference this time was that there was a camera. The anchor said nothing. In the control booth, the producer later admitted that was the exact moment they knew this segment would lead the broadcast. Maya kept going, unprompted now. 3 weeks before that traffic stop, I briefed the National Security Council on a classified restructuring plan. I sat at a table with the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and the National Security Advisor. I spoke for 40 minutes. They asked questions for 20. One of them thanked me by name on his way out. That same month, A security guard at my own building's entrance stopped me and asked if I was lost, looking for the delivery entrance. It was my 4th year working there. She let that sit for a moment before continuing. He flicked my ear like I was an insect. He tapped my forehead like I was a dog that wouldn't sit still. He picked up the only photograph I carry, my mother, and asked if she taught me how to steal. He held up my church dress and wore it like a costume while his partner scrolled through my personal photos and called me entertainment. Her hands, folded in her lap, pressed tighter together.
Those weren't mistakes. Those were choices.
Every single one. They made those choices because they looked at me and decided I was no one. That I had no one. That nothing I said would ever matter. The uniform doesn't matter. The badge doesn't matter. The title doesn't matter. If you are black in this country, there will always be someone who sees the hoodie before they see the human being standing inside it. Then came the part that broke the internet completely. Not the anger. The part about Dorothy. My mother is 71 years old. She has lived in Briar Hollow her entire life. She drives a 12-year-old Buick. It's pale blue. She keeps it spotless. She drives it to church on Sundays, to the grocery store on Wednesdays, and to the hospital she worked at for 26 years, where she still volunteers in the children's ward, even though she's long retired. Maya's voice softened by exactly half a degree. Last year, she was pulled over 3 times, on that same stretch of Route 9 where I was stopped. Once for a taillight that wasn't broken, once for driving too slowly in a lane that road doesn't even have, once because she quote-unquote matched the description of a vehicle involved in an incident that never actually happened. She looked directly into the lens, not at the anchor. My mother does not have a Pentagon number saved in her phone. She doesn't have a title. She doesn't have a badge that makes grown men suddenly remember the law. She has a rosary, a paid-off Buick, and 71 years of being told to be grateful for whatever scraps she's given. When those deputies pulled her over, she did exactly what I did. She sat still. She answered politely, and she prayed it would end without anyone getting hurt. A pause. That's why I'm here. Not for me. I made one phone call, and it changed everything in about 3 minutes. That's not justice. That's privilege, and I don't want privilege. I want a country where my mother gets those same 3 minutes without needing the Department of Defense to make it happen. The clip aired at 6:30 that evening. By midnight, it had 50 million views. By morning, Dorothy Ellison's name was the most searched term in the entire country. A local reporter found her on the porch swing the next day, the same swing where she used to rock Maya to sleep as an infant. What do you want people to know about your daughter? Dorothy smoothed her dress and looked past the camera, out toward the road. I raised her to be strong, but no mother should ever have to raise her child to survive her own country. 1 week later, Maya announced the Ellison Forward Fund, free legal representation for victims of racial profiling in towns with populations under 6,000. Towns too small for the big organizations to notice. Towns too poor for private attorneys to visit. Towns exactly like Briar Hollow. 140 cases were filed within the first month alone. 6 months on, Briar Hollow looked more or less the same from the outside. Same gas station, same diner, same pines lining Route 9. But underneath, everything had shifted. The way a house looks fine right up until someone finally checks the foundation. Wade Garrity was fired outright. Not suspended, not reassigned. Fired, with a termination letter citing conduct unbecoming an officer, documented racial bias in enforcement patterns, and violation of use of force policy. He appealed. The appeal was denied in under 10 minutes, the fastest denial in the department's recorded history. Word eventually got around that he was working the counter at a tire shop 2 counties over, and that he never once listed law enforcement on his resume again. Neighbors said he'd grown quiet, almost hollow, the swagger gone out of him completely, as if some part of him finally understood, far too late, exactly what he'd thrown away and exactly who he'd become in those 19 minutes. Dale Simmons resigned before they could fire him, handed in his badge, his weapon, and a single sentence: "I resign, effective immediately." No apology, no explanation. He moved out of state and changed his number. The internet found him anyway, and for a long while every job he took ended within weeks of someone recognizing his face. 3 additional deputies were disciplined, 2 for failing to report prior complaints against Garrity, 1 for deleting a civilian's dashcam footage in an unrelated incident years earlier. The dominoes hadn't just fallen. They'd exposed an entire row that nobody outside the department had ever known was standing. Sheriff Boyd Callahan kept his job for exactly 41 days after the tape went public. On day 42, the county commission voted 5-1 for his removal. He stood at the same podium where he'd once fumbled his apology, read a 3-line resignation statement, and walked out without taking a single question. The Department of Justice published its findings that October. 17 pages. The summary fit in a single sentence. The Briar County Department engaged in a documented, sustained pattern of discriminatory policing against black residents in traffic enforcement, search procedures, and use of force incidents. Federal oversight followed. 5 years, mandatory. Body cameras on every deputy. Orderly audits. Bias training. Not 2-hour slideshow kind, but the kind with federal monitors sitting in the back of the room taking notes that actually mattered. The department's new sheriff was a woman named Ruth Alvarado, 22 years with the state police, the first woman to ever hold the position in Briar County's history. She didn't give a speech on her first day. She walked into the lobby, took down the old department photo, the one with Garrity grinning proudly in the front row, and replaced it with the new use of force policy, framed, glass front, hung at eye level where nobody could walk past without seeing it. The Ellison Forward Fund processed over 200 cases in its first year. 14 resulted in officer terminations elsewhere. 33 led to policy changes in small departments that had never once been audited. 71 families received legal representation for the very first time in their lives. The fund ran out of a modest 2-room office in Washington, and Maya covered part of the rent out of her own salary without ever mentioning it to a single reporter. And every month, without fail, Maya Ellison still drove that same Corolla down the interstate, turned onto Route 9, and pulled into the gravel driveway on Larkspur Lane. Same porch. Same screen door that never quite closed right. Dorothy always had the red beans simmering before the car even reached the mailbox. She said she could hear that little rattle in the engine from 3 streets away, the one Maya never got around to fixing. They'd eat together, sit on the porch swing until the sky went dark, watch the road. Sometimes a patrol car passed, new markings now, new deputies, body cameras blinking steady on their chests like small, watchful heartbeats. Dorothy would follow it with her eyes until it disappeared, then look over at her daughter and say nothing at all. Because some things don't need words. Some things just need a porch, a warm plate of food, and the quiet knowledge that the road outside is a little bit safer than it used to be. Not because of a title, not because of a badge, but because one woman refused to stay silent, and because silence, once broken, has a way of traveling further than anyone standing in that parking lot ever thought it could. If this story moved something in you, anger, hope, anything at all, leave a comment and tell us what stayed with you. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, because the next story hits even harder than this one.